Hey y'all, I'm Shauna. Welcome in or welcome back to the channel. Today we are talking about a topic that is related to influencing, and that is a discussion about influenceable personalities. Do you have an easily influenced personalities? Is that a thing? My friend Alexa made a video talking about this topic, which I'm gonna link in the comments. And I really enjoyed hearing her discussion about personalities, her experience growing up, why she believed that she's been influenced, and also talking a bit about the cultural phenomenon of the personality tests like Enneagrams and Myers-Briggs. So we're going to talk about it today. And at the end of the video, I'm going to share my results of the Enneagram and the Myers-Briggs, just like she did. So that is just kind of for fun. And can you guess what my Enneagram type is or my Myers-Briggs type? Like what would you guess? Because I have some guesses as to what I think I am, and we will see. Alexa approached this topic with a curious mind, and I really enjoyed her video. And so I'm taking this discussion to places that I want to take it that I don't know that she necessarily intended. This is just where my mind went when I was thinking about my own experiences growing up or as a person, as well as somebody who has reflected on my experiences being an over-consumer, over-shopper. And also, relatedly, what I was thinking about when I was considering these tests and even some of the questions for these tests. One of the websites that I was on had some sample questions before I could take the test, and some of these questions I felt like could be a problem. Whether or not our personality is nature versus nurture or a combination of both, our experiences, our environment, our upbringing, and perhaps native elements to who we are influence our own experiences with consumption and shopping. There are so many ways in which we can be influenced, and the area that I want to talk about today are mental illness, neurodivergence, as well as potentially addiction. I'm not here to diagnose anybody or say that because you experience shopping, you inherently have a mental illness. No, I'm talking about how these things can inform our perception of our own personality and also inform potentially these personality quizzes, as well as our own susceptibility to being influenced. Again, I say potentially, because I really do think that some of these factors are compounding or they intertwine, and some elements of mental illness or neurodivergence, as an example, can be mistaken for our personality. There's also the question of at what point do elements of these things, are they actually who we are? Are they not? And what I find interesting as well is that many of us could have the end result of being influenced, but how we get to that point could be very different. If me and somebody else saw an advertisement or influencer content about a planner, somebody might want to buy it because they have a real desire to fit in and to try things that other people are trying and kind of find this sense of belonging. Somebody else might purchase this planner because it's being advertised in a way that's described as life-changing and they really want to change their life and who they are. Maybe they have a belief that they're not good enough. Or maybe they buy things when people have a strong emotional appeal. The end of the day, you're still influenced, but how we got there could be different, and what components of the appeal to us. I was just a couple minutes ago, I was alluding to the fact of reading some questions from these personality tests, and some of these deal with like emotional regulation as well as like stress response. I'll show you just one example on the screen. This is one of the lighter versions, one that I might be taking the biggest leap with. And the question is, I seek out experiences that I know will make me feel happy or excited. Seeking out novelty or being like a thrill seeker or being somebody who seeks out novel and exciting experiences, things to make people feel a certain way, or seeking out experience to make yourself feel a certain way, can have an association doesn't mean you are, to be clear, with mental health conditions, neurodivergent conditions, as well as addiction-seeking behavior. So somebody might answer a question that is really alluding to emotional regulation, and somebody might struggle with ADHD and have real struggles as a result. And this personality test is equating your moodiness in a situation like, oh, when you're stressed, are you more frustrated or are you more angry? Those aren't the exact questions, but they're trying to suss out what each personality type would respond to stress. Dude, sometimes your response to stress is anxiety and related to your OCD, or you could be experiencing mania. It's not necessarily like some people respond in frustration. Other people's are stubborn. Furthermore, to get to that, sometimes people's stress response does have to do with their own shit. Like negative narratives and messages that you received. Maybe you are so stubborn and you are unflinching because nobody believed you when you were growing up. And so now you are the one who defends yourself. Or maybe you take criticism super seriously. So anytime you receive criticism or you're experiencing stress, you dig in. So I'm going to give you a personal example here. All my life, including when I was very young, like 7 years old, I've been described as like a highly sensitive person, like an emotional person. Like I feel emotions deeply. I feel them strongly. I can have strong emotional reactions to things, and that can be positive or negative. And emotions are key components to personality type quizzes and how you deal with your emotions. Emotional regulation, like maybe like mood control, are also elements of many neurodivergent and mental health conditions. You see the problem we could be having here? So hypothetically, some of my emotional reactions could be coming from one of these legitimate mental health concerns or neurodivergence, and not some basic or intrinsic fact about my personality, but I've internalized it as such, as this is who I am. This is just my personality. That's how I am. So for a long time, I had many people, mostly adults, to be honest, and most especially when I was a child, I had adults who were convinced that something was wrong with me, that this wasn't normal. And I think part of what inclined them to think this way was that I had been like this for so long that like, that's just Shauna. So I grew up with this belief that something was wrong with me and that the way that I expressed and experienced my emotions wasn't normal. When I was younger, I did internalize this, and I really felt like this is just who I am. Like, I'm an emotional person. That's just me. And I didn't do much about it because that's who I am. And we're going to come back to this belief. We're going to circle back to that. And if somebody is a highly sensitive person and that is related to a mental health or neurodivergent struggle, or it's just who they are and it's not that, I don't really feel like beating it into people that something is wrong with you is all that helpful. I'm connecting a few dots here, so just hold with me for a second. My initial shopping, like when it really became a problem, was in like my late teen years and very early 20s, like 19, 20. And it escalated when I found the beauty community in about 2014. And one of the reasons why I personally feel like I was so influenced by joining the beauty community was because it was one of the first times in my life where I felt like I belonged, and being a part of a community was so genuinely exciting to me that I wanted to participate in it in all of the ways. I don't think I'm alone in feeling that, both in the desire to belong or the excitement in belonging, but also what participating in a community can lead to. Like, we've talked about hobbies and stuff on the channel in small ways in many videos, and I think that like that's a relatable thing. And it kind of makes extra sense now when I think about some of the narratives that I absorbed growing up. The second and related factor for why I started shopping a lot, or what contributed to my shopping at the time, was the emotional component. I really resonated with people who had strong emotional reactions to things, or were selling things or pitching things like, this is life changing and this is amazing. I feel really drawn to those kinds of people because I want to connect with people that way, which might also be, some of this desire for community. And I have this deep desire to connect with people, kind of intense, And so I feel like sometimes when someone's like, oh my God, it's life changing, I want that for myself, but then I'm connecting with you. I feel like that was creepy vibes. I hope you know what I mean. And then I was also particularly vulnerable when I was having strong emotional reaction. And it was my emotional vulnerability that led me to being influenced the most. I was at my most vulnerable or influenceable when I was emotional. And so what I find interesting is that I still experience my emotions quite strongly. Like, that is still true to this day, but I have found alternative outlets for my emotions, kind of getting maybe some of the same feelings as I did when I was shopping, but in other ways. And that was a key component to my post No Buy life, is trying to figure out, okay, you are very sensitive to these things. How can we explore and appreciate that sensitivity in a way that is positive and helpful? I found outlets like reading and running and art that all of them have an emotional connection, which I think is very interesting, different levels to them. And now I'm I can be very influenced now to read certain books if I feel like there's going to be an emotional kind of thing to them. And so I wouldn't say that in my hobbies I'm less influenceable or less influenced. I just feel like it's perhaps more positive. And so if, let's say that these emotions and the emotional regulation came from a place of mental illness, let's just say, to ask the question oh, this is your is this my personality, or am I easily influenced because of my personality? It's also like saying, is your neurodivergence your personality? Because there is crossover with neurodivergent symptoms and questions being asked in these quizzes. I also feel like in my own personal journey, I was really hesitant to suss out what's what might be me and what might be something else. I was really resistant to that because of all of the negative kind of narratives that I grew up with and had internalized. And there's a lot of shame in that too. And so I almost didn't want to know. A second part of my personality, which I think many of y'all could relate to, would be thinking. I find myself to be thinking a lot. I love research. I love learning about things, and I like thinking and reflecting. I love that. And it's one of the things that just, I don't know, I enjoy about life. Learning, researching, or critical thinking, reflecting maybe is a better word. They're not all part and parcel of the same maybe outlet, but they're all similar constellations. However, thinking can very much be related to overthinking, and one can very much bleed into the other. And also, critical thinking or reflecting about life can very quickly go inwards, in which we are critical on ourselves, which might be a toxic experience, and also one that could be related to mental health struggles. And so in these questions about, thinking about life or critical thinking, somebody might do a lot of thinking, but this could come from a place of racing thoughts, or somebody who is an anxious person and is constantly thinking about their environment or their life in a way that they would not describe as beneficial. Impulsivity is another example. Would you consider impulsivity to be a personality trait of yours? Like, would you consider yourself to be an impulsive person? Sometimes people need impulse control, and this is a trainable thing in most people, but sometimes a lack of impulse control is related to ADHD. It's not really your personality. So discussions of impulse shopping might not be super helpful for somebody who is impulsive or struggles with impulse control as a result of ADHD. This might make you extra susceptible to being influenced. Another element to this, which is relevant with shopping addiction, is this idea of the addictive personality. This was something I actually learned, or I believe it comes from the 90s. I believe Big Pharma encouraged this and encouraged specific medications to be given out to people who were believed to have addictive personalities. And this, to my knowledge, all of this has been debunked since, and there's no such thing as the addictive personality. According to Verywell Mind, not only is the label not supported by research, but it also promotes the idea that people who develop addictions are all the same, which plays a role in stigmatizing and marginalizing people who have addictions. The concept of addictive personality comes down to the idea that some people develop addictions due to flaws in their personality or character. It suggests that some people are simply more likely to develop addictions due to these supposed characteristics and traits. The problem is that it takes a very complex, multifaceted issue and reduces it down to a simplistic explanation. Critics of the idea of addictive personality also suggest that it leads people to underestimate their risk, contributing to negative stereotypes about people with addiction, and reduces motivation to change. Imagine being told this is who you are. Something is wrong with you. You just have an addictive personality. Like you're just born that way. Well, if you can't change it, then why do anything about it? Or it can lead to maybe this sense of hopelessness. I'm going to put on the screen now some signs of addiction. This does not mean you are addicted. To be clear, these are just some signs. And I think that some people still believe in the addictive personality. I know I grew up hearing about it or being labeled as one. I feel like I did internalize that a little bit. And when it comes to something like shopping, because overconsumption is so normal, it can be really difficult for somebody to see what they're doing as a problem. If the baseline is already so high, in order to even see yourself as having a shopping addiction, which you need to do in order to get help, you might feel like your threshold has to be so high, but your threshold doesn't have to be all the way up here on 1,000,000 in order to have it impact your life. And you may be less inclined to get help if you believe that something is wrong with you or that you just have an addictive personality. And again, some of these questions for these tests can lead or associate addictive behavior with the personality. Here's some more on the addictive personality. There isn't one single trait that leads to addiction. Instead, this term of the addictive personality is used to informally describe a constellation of characteristics, environmental factors, and health conditions that make a person more prone to developing an addiction. To me, I feel like in this context of personality characteristics, this might be more like warning signs, not like the addictive personality, which has, as we talked about, has been debunked. Things like adventurous or thrill-seeking behavior, ADD, comfort with secrets or lying, desire for immediate gratification, difficulty with self-regulation. I think about this question a lot and how much of our personality is attributed to these other factors that may be beyond our control, or maybe we are participating in behaviors that are informed by mental health or neurodivergent conditions, but are still our responsibility to deal with. That is also a different question than saying this is your personality. So I'm going to take these personality tests. I'm going to take the Enneagram test, and I'm also going to take the Myers-Briggs test. And despite these things being true, like I could be a person who enjoys thinking. I could be a more sensitive, emotional person. Perhaps that is my personality. Perhaps some of that is informed by other mental components. I guess my question for this component is, do I feel like these tests capture how I see myself? Could that still be the case? I have this thing on the screen that says, why should I take the Enneagram test? Which it divides people into 9 personalities, which apparently reflect core beliefs about how the world works. And this is a question, not a statement of fact. But if your perception of how the world works is informed by neurodivergence, would that still hold true? Would that be a good thing to analyze or attribute to yourself? I think perhaps what it could do is maybe let you learn about yourself or how you see the world if maybe you're not sure, and doesn't have to necessarily define you, but it could maybe give you insights into how you think and whether or not you want to continue to hold that belief or not, or if you feel like that's a positive belief. The thing that I maybe don't love about this is that the Enneagram is, as they say, is a way to understand why people behave the way that they do. And I think it is a bit of a reduction to say that your behavior comes from this place for all of the reasons why we discussed. There are 9 types, and I think that I am either a 4 or a 5. I feel very strongly about this. Like, I feel like at least 80% sure I'm one or the 2. I think based on just some of what I've talked about today and how I feel about myself, I feel like I'm more of the 4, because this sounds to me like, when I read all of these types, it feels the more like emotionally driven one. And this has been the aspect of my personality that has been the most commented on, and one that I feel like if I was driven by anything in the world, it would probably be emotions. So I have gone to take a look at the Myers-Briggs test too, and I'll come back with my results in a little bit. I believe I'm an introvert, and that's the first letter of the test. Like, the I is for introvert and the E is for extrovert. So that leaves it down to 8. And based on the little descriptions, nothing really feels like me. Like, there's nothing that made me go, you know what? I think it's that one or that one. With the Enneagram, because there was 9, there were 2 where I was like, okay, I think I'm probably this, but this one also feels like it could be right. This one, I feel less secure in my belief because nothing feels representative of me. The 2 that I feel like I would qualify myself as based on the descriptions would be the INFJ or the INFP. I have them here. I don't feel confident in that. Like, if I happen to not be that, I don't know, man. But these are the 2 I'm like, I think if I had to pick out of these 16, I think it would be one of these 2. Maybe this is a bit more of like, what would I want to be? Like, in an ideal world, this is what I would prefer to be. And sometimes maybe like our preferences about what we hope to be true about ourselves and maybe inform some of our choices. And this, I think, could be the problem of some of these personality tests is there's boxes and we're like, oh, which box do I fit in? Well, maybe you don't fit in any of the boxes. Like, there are so many people. I also wonder who they done these tests on, what kind of people across the world, what kind of cultural beliefs and attitudes. I was actually talking with some family the other day about different cultural attitudes about certain topics. And there is a wide variety of beliefs about even like what's a proper display of emotion. So have we adequately gathered enough data? And they could say, oh yes, we've done it on 3 million people. Which people? I'm going to go take the tests and I'm going to come back and I'm going to let you know my results. I'm not really surprised by the Enneagram test. Let me read it to you. So I did indeed get a 4, and I'm now wondering if my own bias about myself, like because I believe to be like an emotionally driven person, if that has biased me towards those results. But also the Enneagram test did say that it's about like your worldview. So if I feel confident that my worldview is driven by emotions, wouldn't that be like a true indicator of the test? So here's what it says. The Enneagram Type 4 individualist has a relentless drive for authenticity. They want to be seen and accepted for who they are, and expressing themselves through creativity is key to their well-being. Okay. 4s connect deeply with their emotions, making them compassionate, original thinkers who are not biased by their expectations of others. I would say that I am biased by the expectations of others. I don't think that that's true about me. I do think some of these elements seem true about me. I also find it important to have emotional expression as like just vital to me. And even with other activities that might not be like a typical emotional expression, I feel like the thing that draws me to them is my ability to channel or experience my emotion, like as an example, running. Apparently, key personality traits of the 4, distinctive inner and outer presentation. I don't know what that means. Prominent artistic outlets, quirky and endearing, melancholic expression, strong sense of identity, may feel a sense of emptiness, passionate about self-expression. What a casual thing to throw in there, may feel a sense of emptiness. I am passionate about self-expression. And I feel like that's a big part of this channel. And I do feel like my desire to be here, like on the channel, is driven like a ton by emotions. Like I feel very powerfully and strongly about the kind of work that I do here. So that's just what I mean. Also, quirky and endearing, like that's not a personality type, in my opinion. Okay, one of them that I feel like kind of funny, because it's accurate, is 4 spend a large amount of time reflecting on the past and using experiences and feelings as a springboard for creative musings and new projects. Have you been on this channel? I do think I sometimes can feel like I live in the past. Not so much being like, oh yes, I love the past and living in it like nostalgia, but more so thinking about it to feel things for right now. This is interesting. Like, I'm not going to let this information be like, oh yes, I am inherently all these things about the 4. Like they're all me. I think now I have more insight to my personality or how I view the world to be like, I can take what I feel is true, leave the rest. And like this idea of there's a sense of emptiness. Do I feel empty inside? No. But there are other things about here, positive and negative, that might be true. And even if they are related to things that aren't my personality, I think it could be interesting to explore why I might feel that way. Like, here's what I'm saying. Let's say I did feel a sense of emptiness, which is kind of dark. But let's say I did. I think this personality test can be like, oh, it's normal to feel a sense of emptiness. 4s are supposed to experience that. Or when you experience that, you go, oh yeah, that's normal. Like I'm supposed to. I'm a 4. You brush it off. I'm a 4. I'm a 4. And I think that's sometimes what can happen with these personality tests. Like there are people who love the Enneagram system, kind of like people who love like the zodiac stuff. And they're like, as a Leo, I do this. And they attribute a lot of their personality to these things. When like, if you are experiencing a deep sense of emptiness and loneliness, like maybe we don't brush that off. All right. So in terms of the MBTI, the Myers-Briggs, so I got the INFJ, which is the advocate. And so there's like all these options, like you're extroverted or introverted, intuitive or observant, thinking over feeling, judging over prospecting, yes, assertive over turbulent. And all of these options are pretty clearly one or the other, except for judging. judging is 51%. And so it's kind of like you answered one question slightly differently and you're 51% on the other side. Like that is so marginal to come down onto one side or the other. And so it would change my type from an INFJ to an INFP, which is, these were the two that I was torn between, which I didn't realize until I did this thing. So I was looking at some of the stats about this, and 4s and INFJs are like, they're often paired together. Like if you're a 4, I think like you're most commonly an INFJ. It's like, or maybe not most commonly, but it's like they're in the top, maybe like 3 that people tend to get when they are a 4. I feel like these two things should support each other, right? Like if you do know yourself and you got 1 score, there should be a commonality, because you shouldn't be radically different in one thing or the other. These two personality types should support and inform each other, in my opinion. Okay, so the INFJ are idealistic and principled. People with this personality type aren't content to coast through life. They want to stand up and make a difference. For these compassionate personalities, success doesn't come from money or status, but from seeking fulfillment, helping others, and being a force for good in the world. While they have lofty goals and ambitions, INFJs shouldn't be mistaken for the idle dreamers. People with this personality type can care about integrity, and they're rarely satisfied until they've done what they know to be is right. They're fueled by profound internal passion, and they dedicate themselves to the pursuit of purpose. So some strengths are that they're insightful, principled, passionate, altruistic, creative. They can be sensitive to criticism, reluctant to open up, perfectionist, avoiding the ordinary, prone to burnout. I don't think that being prone to burnout is a personality trait, but I feel like if you are somebody who is a person who is like relentlessly pursuing something and you're extremely passionate, that maybe like part of your passion is interwoven with your emotions, that can lead to burnout. I am sensitive to criticism, but I don't know that as well is related to this. I feel like my sensitivity to criticism is much more about internal narratives. You can't say is a result of a personality, but that to me specific is a result of environment. And also this like idea of being insightful and principled, I get how these can go along with somebody who is, they have a pursuit of purpose. And if you have a pursuit of purpose, I feel like, passion makes sense with that. Like you would have to be dedicated, I guess. But this idea of like being principled just might be like an addendum, maybe not something that I wouldn't describe myself too much as a principled person. I get how, after reading this, I kind of understand more how somebody who is a 4 could be an INFJ. This idea of being like passionate and like emotionally resilient. And I feel like the work that I do on this channel, as I was talking about before, about the emotional part of it, I am very passionate. And for me, passion and emotion go hand in hand. And one of the reasons why I left my previous career path was because I have a deep sense of helping people, and I wasn't doing it in the way that I felt like I could. I was not fulfilled in the capacity in which that job helped people. And what I do now here on YouTube, I feel much more fulfilled because I am directly helping people who also want to be helped. It is interesting to think about what part of these assessments feel true, what part of this feels not true, and also what parts of these assessments might be true or false, but have nothing to do with like being born that way or having this kind of personality, and what might be informed by the narratives that you tell yourself or other people, or perhaps other emotional struggles or mental health struggles. Sorry. That's it for me. If you've taken these personality tests, I would like to hear from you. Do you feel like they're true for you? Do you feel like they are more of a hindrance and a problem than something that's helpful? Love to hear all your thoughts in the comments. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope to see you again around here soon. Bye. Take